right, please introduce yourself, state your name and DOC number for the record.
Chad Cameron, 459911.
Hi, Chad. My name is Frank Kelsey. Along with me is Mr. Tony Marabella. Mr. Pete Freeman will be your panel. Explain the process to you, read some information to the record, have a parole interview, ask you some questions. You can respond at the end. You can make a statement. We'll take a vote. You understand the process?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Bear with me now. I'm gonna read off everybody that's in attendance or there or by phone. Jennifer Cameron, Lee and Jackie Cobb, Cindy Latour, Melissa Gotro Miller, Nancy Gotro, Scott Levitt, Michelle Bicknair, John Cameron, Justin Cameron, Brianna Weaver, Jennifer Cameron, Michael Gillingham, Michelle Eric, Jamie Gillingham, Leslie McGee, Cantrell Burrell, Misty Bodine, Cassandra Eric, Joreen Alexander, Mandy Martin, Ratigra Brown, Carrie Myers, Aaron Seal, Alicia Poche, Jennifer Cameron, Alan Crawford, Sean Crawford, Catherine Jacobak, Jacob Longman, Robin Capps, Allison Adger. Then that's the supporters. The victims we have Miss Carolyn Thorne, Larry Arnold, Lena Arnold, Daryl Campbell, Darius Credit, and Miss Tracy Barbera. So if I missed anybody, I apologize. We'll let people speak at the appropriate time. Thank you all for being here. Chad Cameron, DOC number 459911, first class offender, parole eligibility date 3/24/2023, good time 12/5/2085, full term 6/22/2101, 99-year sentence, second degree murder, signed a commutation of sentence to 99 years on March the 24th, 2023. Does that sound correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, Mr. Cameron, how old are you?
46 years old, sir.
When's your birthday?
May 3rd, 1977, I was born.
Okay. And how many years have you been incarcerated?
Over 21.
Do you have a high school diploma or GED?
I have a high school diploma from Lee High School in Baton Rouge.
Lee High School?
Yes, sir.
And any further education?
Yes, sir. I went to college for 3 years until this happened.
Are you a trustee there?
Yes, sir. I've been a trustee since 2010, 2011, thereabout.
Okay, it looks like you only had 5 disciplinary write-ups in the time you've been in, is that correct?
Yes, sir. 5.
And the last one was in 2011?
Yes, sir.
And what do you currently do at the facility there?
I've been a mentor in the reentry program for the last 14 years, teaching guys collision repair technology so they can get a trade and go home and get a job, be employable.
Okay, so you work in the collision repair right now? Is that what you're doing? You
Yes,
work
sir.
with folks?
Is that your work? Is that what you've been doing?
Yes, sir. That's what I've been doing for since 2011.
Okay. What are your plans for you to be released? Where are you going to go? What you going to do?
Oh, I have a job at first my reentry plan would be going to the Pro Project for the first 3 weeks to take advantage of classes they offer to help me, reacclimate to society. And now move in with my wife in Baton Rouge and start employment at Jerry Lane, as soon as I can.
Right. How old were you when you committed this crime?
It was in 1998. I just turned 21, sir.
And were you addicted to drugs or alcohol?
Yes, sir, I was drinking heavily at that time.
What about drugs?
Uh, not too often, but I did partake from time to
And
time.
what type of drugs?
I've done marijuana, X pills, and a few like Valium and Xanax and things like that.
Well, tell me a little bit about the crime. Tell me about what happened. I read it. I was, obviously you were at a club. There's some things that went on. I think the crime committed occurred around the precinct. Tell me exactly what happened. Tell me what was that time.
Okay, on the night of, July 10th, 1998, me and a few friends went to a bar called Traditions downtown Baton Rouge. After I was there for a few hours, I went by the DJ booth to talk to a friend of mine, and I heard somebody say that somebody was on a dance floor with a knife. And I looked down the dance floor, and that's when I seen Chris, my victim, with a knife in his hand. And he swung the knife at a friend of mine's stomach, and my friend had bent over, and it looked like he had got hit. So I ran down to check on my friend. As I ran down, I seen Chris running towards the rear exit, so I chased him. And I ran around the block down to the precinct, about a block down the road. And when I came around the corner, he was facing me with the knife. And I still had the beer bottle in my hand, so I threw the beer bottle to try to knock the knife out of his hand, but I missed. But that caused him to drop the knife by his side, and I tackled him. And as I was getting off the ground off of him, I seen the knife laying on the ground next to him. And I did the worst thing I could possibly do. I grabbed the knife and I stabbed him. And I'm gonna regret that for the rest of my life and what I've done to Miss Carolyn and her family.
Now, did you know him?
No, sir, I did not.
You just saw him get in a fight with a friend, or you thought, and then you just.
Yes, sir. When the guy standing next to him on the dance floor just happened to be a friend of mine, and I thought he stabbed him in his stomach.
And then what happened?
Well, that's when I chased him outside.
Right, I know, but after you stabbed him, then what you left?
Yes, yes,
took
sir.
the knife? What exactly happened?
I
The knife.
threw the knife in the garbage can on the way running back to the bar. And I went in the bar and they shut the bar down. And shortly after that, I left and went home.
And then they came and found you. You turned yourself in, or what?
Yeah, a friend of mine, Frank, the guy that I thought had gotten stabbed, had turned himself in. And his father called my father, and I turned myself in.
So what have you been, what kind of classes have you been taking since you've been in? You've been taking any substance abuse, NAA, victim awareness? What are you taking to kind of?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I've taken all those. I've taken thinking for a change, 100 hours, substance. I've taken living life in balance. I've taken anger management. I've taken a Tyro leadership class. I've taken the trauma classes. I've tried to take advantage of all the programming available up here.
Victim awareness, have you taken that class?
I'm currently in victim awareness right now, but I did have the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to meet Miss Thorne and her sister and express to them how terrible I feel for what I've done to her and her family, and answer a lot of questions they had pertaining to that night. And I just hope and pray that our meeting was beneficial to them.
Okay. Warren, you got any input for us?
Like Chad says, he goes back to 2010, back when our reentry stuff pretty much kind of started here. He's been a mentor for this many years, and over the years he has helped a bunch of guys learn trade, and above a trade, learn the ability to be able to cope with things, to give them more tools in their toolbox, not just to do body and fender, but just about life. He's done a really good job for us.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll hear from Mr. Kerry Meyer.
Good morning, Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. I'll keep this brief because I know there are other people here to speak. We have supported Chad again through this entire process, through his clemency process. One of the reasons we've supported Chad is obviously because of his accomplishments, not only just the accomplishments that show, but the difference that he's made in the lives of people there as a mentor. Chad committed a crime. Chad does not have a criminal mentality. Chad has proven that through his record. He's proven that through the work that he's done, through the programs that he's taken. And we are in full support. We will provide Chad with the services he needs, including social norms and financial skills, consumer skills. We'll assist him through the transition before he actually goes to restart his life completely and start working. We'll give Chad that opportunity through our program to have a proper reentry. And we just asked this board today to grant Chad his parole.
All right, thank you. Let's see, on Chad's, we have Miss Catherine. Would you like to make a statement? Jack Beck?
So I'm Mr. Cameron's attorney. I'll be reserving my statements. till the
You're
end.
at the end, you'll finish up. Okay, what about Jennifer Cameron?
Yes, sir. My name is Jennifer Cameron. I'm Chad's wife. I don't really know what all to say about him. He's made such a difference, not just in the community here, but in the community at home as well. Even with just my kids, he loves my children like they're his own. We are fully prepared to support Chad completely. He has a home, he has a vehicle, have him home if this board would see fit to grant him today. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your comments. All right, now we'll hear from Miss Carolyn. You'd like to make a statement, Miss Carolyn?
He's gone. He's gone, Miss Carolyn.
Giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of my son, Chris Thorne. This is Chris. He was 26 years old when he was murdered on July. Excuse me, I'm a little nervous.
Okay.
And he was murdered on July 10th, 1998 by Chad Cameron. We endured 4 years of waiting for a trial while Chad was out free, living a life. I have forgiven him because God tells me in order to be forgiven, you must forgive. This doesn't mean I don't expect a murderer to not have to face the consequences of his actions. Chad was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole or probation. He was found guilty in a court of law. Chad was not the only one sentenced to life that day. Chris's father and I were sentenced to life without our child. Our family was sentenced to life without a grandson, stepbrother, cousin, nephew, and uncle. Found that the hardest part of losing a child is living every day afterwards, realizing the only visits will be at a cemetery, the only conversations will be one-sided, never seeing Chris again or hearing his voice, never feeling that hug, period, I love you, Mom. I've had to live with burying my child, something I wouldn't wish on any parent, and losing my husband due to the stress of missing Chris. There are no words to describe the heartbreak and sadness I feel every day. I don't understand how 20 years is anywhere close to a life sentence. Chad Cameron will get out young enough to have a life. My son will never have that opportunity. I was robbed of sharing my life with Chris. Not only were Chris's hopes and dreams taken away, but mine as well. It breaks my heart when I see friends and family with children and grandchildren. I'm happy for them, but I'm just that happiness they have. All of these happy memories were taken away by Chad Cameron. On the night of July 10th, 1998, Chris had a confrontation with one of Chad's friends on the dance floor of a bar. Chad and his friends saw this and proceeded to chase Chris out the side door and down the street. Chris was running away from them, not fighting. If you knew Chris, you knew he was not a fighter. He was trapped in the corner of a fenced area on the parking lot of a police station. He was beaten by those who chased him. Chris was holding a knife to protect himself and dropped it during the beating. Chad Cameron picked it up and chose to stab Chris 4 times, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. My son later died that night. He was trying to get away and only trying to protect himself. I am here today to tell you that I do not believe 20 years out of a life sentence is enough time for taking the life of my only child, Chris Thorne. I believe that Chad Cameron should go home to his mother when Chris comes home to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. So sorry. Thank you. Lanny Arnold, anything like to make us?
My name is Lanny Arnold. Christopher Thorne was my nephew. He was murdered by Chad Cameron on July 10th, 1998. I am here on behalf of my nephew, on behalf of a life he had and a life that Chad Cameron followed and took. It took over 3 years to finally take our day in court. Before that day, it was torturous for my sister and my brother-in-law, knowing that Chad Cameron was out on bond living his life while my nephew would never take another breath. But our day had finally arrived. My sister Carolyn and my brother-in-law Kenneth sat through several days of court proceedings. We listened to the horrific details of their child's brutal murder. We listened to the opposing counsel defend Chad Cameron. After all the evidence had been presented and the judge made his ruling, we finally heard life in prison at hard labor without the benefit of parole, probation, or suspension of sentence. We thought the judicial system had done its job. We thought Chris would at least get justice. We thought that we would never have to relive the horror of this heinous crime. After all, the judge said, life in prison without parole. Chad Cameron filed an appeal in district court and was denied. He filed an appeal with the Supreme Court and was denied even hearing the case. Yet here we are today, having to relive what should have been settled over 20 years ago. Chad Cameron took my sister's only biological child's life. Chad was chased down the street and cornered in a fenced-in area on a police substation. Chad and his friends brutally beat him unconscious. They took turns beating him with beer bottles and punching and kicking him. Chris was unconscious and was down and no threat to anyone. But that wasn't good enough. Mr. Cameron made a conscious decision to pick up a knife and go back and stab Chris 4 times. One fatal stab to the abdominal aorta. Then Chad Cameron left him to die and returned to party as if nothing had happened. Chad Cameron not only took Chris's life, but he took the hopes and dreams away from his parents. Chad Cameron took one life but devastated many lives. This entire process has caused great grief to my sister. We were unable to attend the first hearing as Carolyn, for number one, didn't think her health would allow her. She's been in and out of the hospital every time we had one of these issues come up. Her stepson had also had a stroke and ultimately died. She thought seeing Chad Cameron was more than she could handle at the time. But she knew we had to face this head on in order to give Chris a voice. There is not a day that goes by that my sister does not think about her child and the future he could have had. I understand that Chad Cameron has been a model prisoner and wants a second chance at life. I do understand that. But when does Chris get a second chance at life? We put our trust in the judicial system, and we trust that that same system that put him in prison will do the right thing and keep him there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. All right, Ms. Tracy Barbera, would you like to make a statement?
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Kelsey. Good morning, Mr. Marabella, Mr. Freeman. I do recall the pardon hearing back on December 12th and many of the comments that were made by Mr. Freeman and Mr. Marabella. And this is very difficult for Chris's family to deal with. And I know the members of the board do understand how the family is feeling. The difficulty here is that it's been such a short period of time. The board recommended commutation December 12th. The governor granted it March 24th, and here we are September 20th. So this family has really only been dealing with the possibility of this man who received a life sentence for killing Chris could be released back to the streets. And do I believe that Chad Cameron will spend a lot more time in prison? No, I don't. But I would ask that the members of the board please give this family more time to deal with his potential release. If we had negotiated a plea to manslaughter in this case with a 40-year sentence, his parole eligibility would have been after 85%. Of course, then I realized Act 22 was passed, and so his eligibility would be even sooner than that. But the bottom line is he has served less time in prison than Chris was alive. So I would ask you to please take those things into consideration and balance them with the good things that Chad Cameron has done in prison. And please, if you're inclined to grant parole, please wait. Please let him serve some more time for this family to deal with. But again, we do stand with the family in opposition to his release. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. All right, Chad, would you like to make a statement on your behalf?
Oh, yes, sir. I would first like to thank the board for this opportunity. I would also like to thank my supporters here at headquarters and on Zoom. I would give anything in this world to be able to go back to that night and fix what I have done. My heart breaks when I think about all the hurt and pain that my actions have caused Miss Carolyn and her family these past 25 years. Meeting Miss Carolyn was the hardest thing that I've ever done. How could I possibly sit across from Chris's mother? I asked myself that a million times leading up to it. I practically cried the whole time because I was so nervous and overcome with guilt. I made a promise that day that if I am released, I would do good things with my life and make sure that others benefit from my story. I absolutely plan on keeping that promise if granted here today. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity.
All right, thank you. Ms. Catherine, would you like to wrap it up?
I would, thank you. Members of the board, I know that we appeared before you in December to discuss clemency for Mr. Cameron. Since that time, he's received 18 new certificates. He has taken advantage of the programming afforded to him by this facility. And I think that it's been summed up by people much better than me that Mr. Cameron is dedicated to the idea of rehabilitation. Judge Buras said in one of the 42 letters written in support of his release that it's his pleasure to write this letter on behalf of Chad Cameron to show appreciation for his tireless work and to say with certainty that he's a wonderful man and would be a wonderful citizen. Mr. Cameron has spent the past 22 years of his life becoming a different person from the man that he was in July of 1998. And I like to think, members of the board, that the idea of parole is the idea that we are we can become better than the worst moments in our life, that we can be dedicated to the idea of rehabilitation. Chad Cameron has done that. He has received 100 certificates. He, even in the short period of time that he has remained here with the idea that he may be paroled out, he has continued to dedicate himself to the idea that rehabilitation is better. Chad will spend the rest of his life remorseful for the choices that he has made and the decisions that he took that led him to take Mr. Thorne's life. And he has expressed his sincere remorse. But he has outlined a plan for being a contributing citizen of this society, and we ask members of the board that you grant his release.
Right, thank you. All right, it's now prepared to vote. All right. Mr. Cameron, difficult case. I'd like to thank the family victims for being here and for talking for your son. I know this has been a terrible, terrible situation. I know that, you know, you're right. You have a sentence back years and years ago, and you think, well, it's one way, and look, the laws change. That would be easier on us if sometimes laws didn't change, but they change. And our charge, our responsibility is to not retry the case, but make a decision based on what the man has done and the years he's been in. I understand Mr. Barbera's point, and I take that all into consideration. Mr. Cameron, it was a terrible crime. It's a terrible crime. You're right. You're never going to be able to take away what you did. But I have to look at what you've done for the last 20 years, what the warden said, what your programs you've taken, your risk probability is low. You know, again, these cases are never easy for us. They're never easy for me. Speak for me. They're never easy for me. But again, based on all the information I have, based on the warden's comments, your institutional record, your low risk score, your plan, my vote would be to grant your parole today to the Louisiana Parole Project. Have no contact with the victim's family. NAA 2 times a week. In community service 6 hours per month. And maintain full-time employment. Just one vote. That's me. That's my vote. Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Cameron, you know, I do agree with the chairman that you definitely have done everything you're supposed to do in prison. You've done great. You've done everything that could be expected of you. But on the other side, you know, it's a murder charge. You know, in 21 years, to me, is insufficient time at this time. I do think you'll get out. You know, I will tell the family, I think eventually he will make parole. But today I am going to vote to deny.
All right. Mr. Marabella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank everyone who came here today. We have heard you, and we do appreciate the courage that it takes to be here. Our role is to determine not necessarily what happened or why it happened, but who this person is today. The facts of the case are something that we do take into account. There's no question. I do understand Ms. Barbera's comments as well. I think that based upon my responsibility, what I believe my job is today, I have to agree with our chairman today that he's got a very good prison record. He's done community service work. He's got an excellent transition plan, low risk. He was 21 years old at the time. My vote today, likewise, would be to grant with the same conditions as outlined by Mr. Kelsey.
Right, you have 2 votes to grant, 1 vote to deny. Today, your parole's been granted with to the Louisiana Parole Project, no contact with the victim or victim's family, NAA 2 times a week, 6 hours of community service, and maintain full-time employment. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.